Well, good evening, this is Hound Dog Steve wishing you a very pleasant evening. And this is the second essay that I wrote, the last one, which was the gaslighting essay. This is called The Fly in the Globalist Soup. And I want to remind everybody that society is a very complex organism. And societies are basically the day-to-day individual actions of a community of many, many people that add up to the sum total of what a society is. And that is a complex thing. It cannot be engineered. It cannot be organized. Klaus Schwab talks about the fourth industrial revolution as if, humans invented the first, second and third industrial revolution. Well, no, they came about organically, and I mentioned in my essay, things happen because they needed to happen. But I find it fascinating that here we have a group of people who, their industries, their desires, their view of the future, of the past, are the ones that created the mess that they are now supposedly going to clean up. I find that is completely improbable and frankly impossible. And so there is a huge fly in the globalist soup. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this essay. It is going for print in the Dialogue magazine, and I will leave the link below in the description box. And I would recommend you read this magazine, and there are only 4 issues per year. I will get a subscription if you live in Canada, because this is one of the few bastions of free speech left in Canada today. The Fly in the Globalist Soup. Klaus Schwab has penned a great global reset, which can be found on the World Economic Forum website. I'll leave the link below for that so you can read it yourself. It lays out the technocratic dream of the future, a future where you will own nothing and you will love it. Goods will be rented, delivered by drones and Tinkerbells, no doubt, paid for with a digital currency. There is no explanation as to how you will earn this currency, which of course begs the question, then who will really own everything? Slaves were not allowed to own anything either, which gives us a clue as to the underlying rhetoric here. Klaus is one of the many technocratic dreamers who have thought to re-engineer the world to make it safer, more orderly, more sterile, more generic, with the humans being just like non-player characters in a video game. These characters play bland cameos on an endless loop of boredom and repeated actions, just like slaves in fact. They do the bidding of the folk like Klaus Schwab and enhance his video game, no doubt. Let's step back for a moment. Here's some homework I'd like you to do. I would like you to watch the film Things to Come. And again, I will link that film video link down below. It is a 1936 screen adaptation of an H.G. Wells novel by the same name. The movie is a bit painful to watch, even though it is relatively short, 1 hour and 34 minutes. The glacial pace of the dialogue and the plot make it a bit tedious. Why watch it then, you may ask? H.G. Wells was a notorious technocrat. He explored these notions in The Time Machine, The War in the Air, The First Men in the Moon, and many others. This book was used as the unofficial guide for the United Nations raison d'etre on its path towards the goal of technocracy. Even in this film, the fatal flaw is played out. Since I first noticed this theme, I've seen it played out over and over again in sci-fi movies that try to predict a technocratic future. It is also why this current version, which is being rolled out as we speak, will also suffer the same fate. The film correctly predicts the beginning of World War II, but instead of ending in 1945, it continues on into the 60s. While troops on the ground have reached a point where there is little food and no supplies to last. They have become little more than a ragtag bunch of outposts and pockets of resistance. During this time, a secretive group called the Engineers, based in Basel, of all places, Switzerland, have re-engineered their world into a magnificent feat of engineering perfection. They have reached a point of expansion. They are ready to export this new order to the rest of the world. Sleek airmen and sleek aircraft go around to the remaining outposts and offer an ultimatum. Surrender and accept the new order, or die. These unwitting survivors had little choice. We then fast forward to a world not unlike Star Trek's Confederation headquarters on Earth, very organised, a truly advanced metropolis. I'll let you watch the ending for yourself and see how it all plays out. All these scenarios for the technocratic future and most plans for social engineering are done on paper by a group of eggheads or bureaucrats. They rely on everyone and everything doing exactly what they are supposed to do at exactly the right time, or it won't work. So of course, people must be monitored to ensure this happens, and we can see this happening already. If I may digress here, I remember in many discussions with my now deceased landlord about how we should fix the world, he would always end up taking on an angelic expression, raising one finger skyward and saying, "You're just forgetting one thing, Steve, human nature." How right he was. Societies are not static but constantly changing depending on the demands of the moment. The world in which we live today is a very complicated place. It didn't start out complicated but grew that way. It grew organically. When things need to be built, they are added or adapted to fit into the existing system. It didn't all happen at once. It happened as it was needed. It required innovation. Innovation only occurs in a society that allows freedom. Innovation cannot occur in China, or North Korea for that matter, under the CCP, because thinking freely is deemed a threat to the ruling body. This is the first part of the flaw. Technocracy demands compliance and, like China, it will implement a social credit system with CCTV cameras to monitor your every action to ensure compliance in deed and thought. How then do we innovate? Innovation is stifled by these kind of draconian exercises. Technocracy needs innovation to keep it moving forward, or it risks becoming a cul-de-sac of history. The biggest part of the flaw is that many important parts of the plan are missing. Missing parts that doom any such plan to failure. I don't know if you're a Star Trek fan, but so many Star Trek episodes highlight this point. Star Trek was one of the technocrats' prime carriers of their message, their dream for the world. Usually at the beginning of an episode, a crew member is infected by a deadly alien entity or virus. During the entire episode, countless samples are taken and analysed by a computer. Then, just before the end, oh Lord, it's a miracle! The doctor rebuffers the transported DNA record of the patient taken a split second before transportation, and voila, the DNA is rebuilt and everything is fine. Yay! But wait a minute. How did you do that thing again? Don't think too hard about that, Sonny. It'll make your brain hurt. This is the great thing about a Hollywood script or a script by Klaus Schwab. You can make it look like it's all possible on paper when all of the really important bits aren't worked out yet. What if 50% of the population are unable or unwilling to make that leap into your dream space? What happens when you curtail the personal hopes and dreams of millions of people? When you force feed them a narrow dream of a few thousand technocrats who have no answers when things don't work. Remember the biodome? It was a completely sealed area where 3 families lived. They generated their own biosphere, grew their own food, etc. It was a 5-year project, supposedly. It ended in 2 years because molds and fungus took over the food production. They had no answers to resolve a simple issue like mold. And trust me, there are far more complex issues in a society than just mold and fungus and bacteria. These technocrats have had since 1936 to solve world starvation and lack of clean water. This would seem like a simple priority, and yet after 90 years the numbers have changed only marginally. These technocrats who now have the plan are the same group of people who have, along with the government, justified the largest environmental assault and rape on this planet in the history of humanity. Every country is pouring deadly effluent on an industrial scale into the environment at every level to achieve the first stage of the technocratic dream. These people are now going to fix everything when they didn't have the foresight to see the long-term consequences of wholesale pollution. Isn't this like getting food poisoning at a restaurant and then going back for the cure? The good news about the bad news is that even though this plan will fail, because of its inability to be able to adapt to humanity and its preference to force humanity to adapt to the plan, humanity as always ultimately moved in the right direction to allow survival at the least and abundance at the best. You don't have to force people to accept the right idea. No one told people that round wheels were better than square ones. The idea of globalism is a hash of the worst parts of fascism and Marxism tied together with greed, avarice and bureaucracy, which can be seen in the globalist disastrous experiment that is the EU. It's an idea that has failed in Russia, the Balkans, Venezuela and soon China, all for the same reasons. It's too severe an ideology which smothers the life out of the population. It bankrupts the government because of the lack of incentive and decreased productivity. I don't know when globalism will fail, but it will. I believe it will be replaced not by the New World Order, but by the New World Community, based on self-sufficiency. The internet has opened up this possibility along with an incorruptible currency of the people, which is Bitcoin. Out of the ashes of the disaster that is globalism/Marxism/fascism will grow a world where individuality can live with community, where innovation is not stifled by competition or ideology, where the goal of humanity is to truthfully try and figure out what is really going on. Then instead of monetizing or weaponizing that information, it will be shared with everyone so that we can all make wise decisions for ourselves, our families and our communities. Much of the plight in the world today was not caused by the people who live there, but by technocrats and leaders who forced an unworkable plan on an unsuspecting public. Well, thank you very much. I hope this has brought a little bit of hope to you and a little bit of clarity about the disaster. Like I say, that is being foisted upon us. This plan will not work. And of course it is going ahead. There's no way to avoid it now. The only thing that you can do is to make yourself more sustainable, to set aside some supplies so that should things get locked down again, you can basically survive that lockdown. But that is what's going to happen, folks. They are going to foist this idea on you whether you like it or not, and we are going to have to suffer through it until it fails, and we will have to create our own systems that work within our own communities because of this failed idea. So make your plans carefully and think towards the future, and think post-CV. Think what's going to happen after this crisis is over and the technocratic dream has basically been shown to be unworkable to all people. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we'll talk very, very shortly. You take care now. Bye-bye.